Hey you guys, what's up? It's Matt here on Just for Fun. We're going to take a look today at a aggro deck for post rotation standard that does not involve any BFZ cards, although it could. There's definitely some swaps you could make out that I could see as being legit, but I built this before, so I wanted to show you it as it is before, tweaking it with any new cards. I haven't drafted the set, by the way, and I have read spoilers, but I feel like I try not to brew until I've brew for constructed until I've played limited. Just as a general rule of thumb, I feel like the limited format helps you work out which cards play better than they look or look better than they play, and all those kind of things, how they really stack up. It's hard to know until you've tossed them around a little bit, kick the tires, right? So anyway, this deck is sweet. I'm sure there's other versions of it going around as like Atarka red or whatever you want to call it. To me, it's a red aggro deck. It's sort of like, in Modern, I love playing Kiln Fiend decks. This is kind of like a port of a Kiln Fiend deck to Standard, in a sense, because I was watching Ari Lax play Infect, and L, some other decks, a bunch of decks, with Become Immense. I think it was Infect where he called it this. No, it wasn't Infect. It was gosh, I can't remember what deck. It was a crazy aggro deck. Oh, Suicide Zoo. He was playing Suicide Zoo, and he called Become Immense the Red Treasure Cruise. Which is funny because it's not Treasure Cruise, it doesn't draw cards, and it's not red, it's green. But in actuality, he was just trying to allude to the fact that this is really an overpowered burn spell. Pump spells and burn spells are kind of similar in a lot of ways. Pump spells are both better and worse because they give you the opportunity to use it as like a combat trick, as sort of a counter spell of your opponent's removal, and also as damage to the face. So this card basically reads 1 mana, deal 6 to 12 damage to your opponent. And why do I say 6 to 12? Because of Temur Battle Rage, which is an insane card. When I first saw this set spoiled, this was instantly my favorite card in the set. I was like, this card is insane. It's a common. It's great. It's so unbelievably good with the strategies that I like to play, which is like an aggro combo, quick kill your opponent, do 20 out of nowhere deck, and this deck does 20 out of nowhere consistently. How it does that is Become Immense, Battle Rage, and Prowess creatures. In addition, we have some other interesting fun tricks in here. So in the one drops, first mana base. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 fetch lands, and 9 basics in the 20 land deck. It's pretty low to the ground. The only thing that costs more than 2 is Become Immense, which technically costs 1, which is why all the fetches are here, in order to feed the Become Immense. Plus it keeps you from flooding out, which is the death of a low mana aggro deck. You have to have a way to avoid flooding if you want to be competitive with a cheap deck. Now, cheap mana cost wise. Now, in the one drop slot, we've got Taylor Swift Spear, doing what she does best in style. Prowess, hasty prowess beats, just all around the perfect card for a burn deck. And I've said it before, and I'll stick by my sentiment that I think that she is a better Goblin Guide. I know that's a pretty strong thing to say, but I do think she's better than Goblin Guide. Speaking of 1 mana goblins, Goblin Glory Chaser gets no love, because he's a player. He's only good on the play, right? So if you have, he's not going to be able to attack through your opponent's 2-drop most of the time. But if you can get this in for one on turn 2 then becomes really hard to block, and it can deal a lot of damage over the course of the game. My combo with Goblin Glory Chaser is called the Full Moon, which, if you've played any Magic Origins Limited, is like the ordeal of Thassa or whatever cheap way to win with Heroic, in Theros draft. It's like turn 1 play this, turn 2 make it a 4/3 trample. It'll absolutely get in there and get menace, and then it's a 5/4 that has to be double blocked, and it's just a real pain in the ass to deal with for your opponent. So yeah, you run the risk of getting 2 for 1. Yeah, this has a drawback, but you can play it. You can sort of play around this drawback pretty fairly easily. Anyway, in almost every match, if I'm on the draw, I board out the Glory Chasers and the Full Moons. So, but it's mostly in there for the surprise factor. Nobody expects that coming, and you can just steal a lot of games for free, basically. Rounding out the 1-drops, we got Zergo, which is good early and good late. Good late in the for the dash cost, great against control decks because you can avoid sorcery speed removal on sweepers. 2-drop slot, Heir of the Wilds is just a great aggressive creature because it trades up because of the death touch. The ferocious ability is occasionally relevant. It's also like people just don't want to block him. So also works really well with Call of the Full Moon and Temur Battle Rage, right? Like, give it double strike, and then it kills the creature no matter what size it is because of the death touch. Give it trample, deal 1 damage to the creature, and all the other damage tramples over. Majoring Bully is just a aggressive prowess dude. I just wanted something else in that slot, and it's worked decently so far. Abbot is like your card advantage spell, and this you really want to not cast on turn 2 if you can avoid it. I mean, if you have to, you cast it. It's a 2/1 prowess dude. It beats down, but this is usually what I'm using to try to hit my 3rd land drop, and maybe you get lucky and play something else too. But it's a nice little cantrip-y kind of effect strapped to a decent body. Obviously, Atarka's Command is just an insanely powerful card that does a crap ton of damage all at once by giving your team, pumping your team, and dealing 3. The other abilities are occasionally relevant as well. I'm always happy to draw this card. One thing to keep in mind with the fetch is if you have the Windswept Heap, obviously can only get Forest. Foothills, most of the time you want to get Forest if you have at least one other red source, because there's only 3 forests and there's 6 mountains, so you're twice as likely to hit a mountain. So you want to make sure that you have at least one of each. Once you got that, you're pretty much okay to cast everything. Magmatic Insight is just as a 2-of to round them out, because again, I like to avoid flood. It triggers prowess, dumps another card in the yard for Become Immense. It's just a good synergy call in the deck. Sideboard is again one of the more well thought out ones for me, at least. So in a match against other aggro deck, we got a couple Wild Slashes, couple Smashes or Plummets, depending on what things you want to get out of the way, and depending on the situation, you might board in a Mardu Scout or 2 or something like that. And then against control, we'd be boarding out all the Glory Chasers and Call of the Full Moons, and boarding in a Mountain and the Mardu Scouts and Scab Clan Berserkers. So the Mountain is there because you're upping your curve by adding 4 3-drops. So these are good because they avoid sorcery speed removal, right? This is just an insane hoser of control decks. I love this card. This is way underrated. You can wait till your opponent sweeps your board. or it's, you know, 1-for-1 and removing your dudes. Yeah, I don't tend to play out more than one creature at a time with this deck, maybe two, you know, but typically I'll keep one in my hand, especially if it's like Zergo or something like that, so that if my opponent removals all my dudes, he's not safe. You want to have a steady stream of threats, and this helps you with that. You know, opponent sweeps your board. He thinks he's in the hot seat. You play this, get in there, whack him for 2, pumps it to a 3/3. So he's probably on the back foot at that point. Has to deal with the 3/3, and if he's casting a removal spell, he's going to take 2 more. So this is kind of like a replacement for Eidolon in some senses, that they're going to have to pay some life payment to deal with it. So, you know, Plummet, what did I put that in there for? There was some card that I just couldn't beat, some flying dude. You know, I have nothing to block flyers, and what was it? Something with flying and lifelink. Dramoka. Yeah, there were a few other things that were flying and lifelinking that I was like, okay, I need some more removal, and you know, hey, it's the green Doomblade, right? Not really, but it helps. It's pretty good card. Anyway, I think the deck is really super fast. It's a lot of fun. I've 20'd a lot of people to the face on turn 4, and yeah, let's see if we can get some matches in, do some cool stuff with it.